Welcome to the next episode of the Green Quotient video and podcast that brings in news from the world of innovation to see what's being done to arrest all the harm that we have brought about for the environment. And we have with us a very special guest today. While we have invited Mr. Richard Seline with us, and a little bit about Richard. He is wearing so many hats that it's hard to kind of say a little bit about him. It's so impressive. So, Richard, correct me if I'm wrong, that you are working with the modern technologies application side of it, where you are making sure that the revenue is generated for it, and you are creating the network and partnerships to optimize that.
Right.
To apply in all the projects, and you're seeing that they are managed, and all the leadership is engaged not only in the local area but also globally. And
Right.
you're arranging fundraisings, and now you're involved with Accelerator H2O. So it will be wonderful if you could explain your role, in common man's term, what you do.
I think the best way I can describe it is that what really sparked the formation of Accelerate H2O, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, but we're not a charity. We're basically connecting the supply and demand of best generation technology, expertise, capital, projects, end users in a way that we found to, hopefully to be a little bit more efficient and effective when you're talking about a state as big as Texas in a $9 billion market that is very, very, diverse, right? I mean, we go from some of the most persistent areas of drought to the west that sometimes even reach down to the Gulf Coast, all the way to persistent flood and storms. So it's a very unique geography. And underneath that quote unquote geography, as you mentioned, is we have a very diverse population of beneficiaries of the use of water, managers of that water. And frankly, I think that since the drought of record of 2010, 2014, the greater appreciation for conservation and reuse has really emerged, not as a, social cause or a corporate social responsibility. What it really has done is it's gotten to the bottom line of corporate Texas businesses, industries in ways. So our role, and my role is to find every way to be a dot connector, in a pretty sizable state.
Okay. So I remember when we met at the Houston Open Innovation Conference last month, you were often talking, or you were explaining the term resilience, which again, for everyone to understand, is basically as Texas is swinging between extreme drought to flash floods in some parts, and then the hurricane is coming and there's a water glut. Now,
Yep.
Too much or too little, both can kill or destroy. So resilience is kind of the ability to always adjust to see that it's not suffering from any of these crises. It's ready to adapt and still have enough water for every citizen, right?
Right. I think one of the critical, and like you said, also, definitions and words matter, right? And so everybody has their definition of sustainability, resilience, smart this, smart that. The way we are focusing on resilience is pre-disaster risk mitigation. That we now know because of the droughts and the floods and the fires, because we also have to talk fires as being a water-related incident,
exactly.
earthquakes, tsunamis, all these things, that we're trying to emphasize that if there is more focus on pre-disaster mitigation, whether it's high tech or soft tech, and we can talk about soft tech in a little bit, but the whole idea is that it's now been proven if we focus on resilience from a pre-disaster risk mitigation, we are going to minimize the cost, expenditure, loss of life on the emergency response and immediate recovery. Not that those aren't important. And so,
right. But it'll be less smaller scale if there is a pre-disaster plan and not just sitting up when it has happened.
Correct. I mean, the worst time to come up with a plan or find the technology or try to resolve something is hour one of an incident, right?
Right.
So in this case, what our perspective about resilience, and again, using water as a major, as a kind of a theme or a pillar, is that the more resilience your neighborhood, your community, your region, and that includes citizens, civic, business, industry, public sector. The more pre-disaster investment that's made, we're going to connect people to sustainability, to ways to think about conservation in a different way, but also it is taking the natural environment and technology and innovation, which are two words, by the way, that also need to be better defined. When we talk about innovation, what are we really talking about? But to go to your point, resiliency in our minds is doing it as much as you can before something happens. Yes, we do a lot of preparedness, but we're talking about making some serious investment in the infrastructure, the facilities, the tools that are needed right up front.
So Richard, in that perspective, tell us a little about how there is a shift in thinking or approach after Harvey, or a few years back we were having kind of year after year of drought. Tell us a little bit about how decision makers or industry leaders, the investors and innovative thinkers or new startups, how are they gearing up to kind of work together to make that happen?
Right. I always kind of joke that what's begun to shift significantly is no one buys an umbrella on a beautiful sunny day, right?
Yes.
Except now the insurance and reinsurance and government entities are basically saying that if you don't buy that umbrella, it could cost 300% more in the future, or frankly, we may not have as many umbrellas to go around. No matter how big and modern, the United States is, the sense is that we now need to look at buying these umbrellas today. And what's driving that, I think, is a whole set of circumstances. So since let's see, over 3 years, there's been 5 major floods and storms to hit the greater Houston area. 4 of those came from central Texas. The area from Dallas-Fort Worth down to San Antonio, the I-35 corridor, is now labeled Flash Flood Alley by the National Weather Service and by NOAA, right? And as a result of that, that water ends up coming down into the, towards the Gulf, towards the communities and cities, not just Houston, small rural cities as well, all right? So $154 billion of losses, on a persistent basis. When you get to $500 billion of losses which have occurred, that's when the economics start saying, no, we're going to start looking at these umbrellas on sunny days. So that's one shift, right? That's been one shift in thinking. The second shift is that we now have enough technology, we have enough after action reports and lessons learned that provide kind of a roadmap that say, if we do this, if we make this investment, if we change this practice, if we apply these common sense, tools and thinking, that we can now measure that it's almost a 1 to 4 reduction. Meaning for every dollar you spend, it's a $4 to $6 savings on what, right? Now, I am telling you, that's not just the big Fortune 500 companies. That's every little small business that often lives, from month to month, payroll to payroll. And when those small businesses go out, that really affects your community and your neighborhoods directly, right?
And the entire economy gets affected in some way. So, I liked that article where you wrote on LinkedIn, where you said that we are data rich but intelligence poor, and that it's an afterthought until there is not enough or too much. So do you think that data rich but intelligence poor, from what I'm hearing from you, is going to kind of move, or we will do away with it and they will become intelligence rich as well from the lessons learned?
Right. I think what you're doing through these podcasts and through your activities is a part of this bridge. We have lots of data. You can go online and Google how much data we have about flood basins, about droughts, about where the most vulnerable areas are. That's wonderful. Now, what do you do with all that information, right? How do you make it actionable? Okay. So through what you're doing in your podcast and your outreach, number one is being able to communicate what all this actually means for somebody.
Right.
That could be for my household. It could be for my small business. It could be for my neighborhood. It could be for my Fortune 500 company. So we are seeing an uptake in lots of smart water tools, sensors, meters, big data analytics, drones, all kinds of information, right? I think the challenge that is really being tackled right now is to be able to pull this information in as simple form as apps that are on your phone that pretty much tell you that there is the expectation that a 2-inch rainfall is going to cause this kind of street closure or impact for your commute, or frankly, for your departure out, right? All the way over to when should we release water out of the reservoirs and the dams hours or days before, and do it in a way where it doesn't flood everybody else, okay? But you release it, it's kind of taking the plug out of the drain slowly. And that way what you have are empty reservoirs, empty buckets to hold this next big, right? So, so I think you personally, your outreach to folks and others, and some of the things that we're trying to do is essentially say, you've got to find a way to take all of this robust data, and a lot of it's visual data, mapping, lots of different toolkits, and ultimately say, as a result of this is the actions that you need to take. This is where you need to spend your investment money. These are the tools that you can buy. These are the actions that you can take. These are the design. And this is the other part of it, is we need to stop focusing on rebuilding. We need to focus on redesigning. Rebuild gets you back to what you had. Redesigning makes you more pre-disaster risk mitigated.
Awesome. So again, Richard, I'm thinking that we are almost expecting that within innovation or with technology, something will come up that will kind of solve the problem, and we are the receivers and of the benefit. We're paying our taxes, and there is that attitude across the board. I'm paying my taxes. Why is this happening? This shouldn't happen. At the same time, some of our behaviors are feeding into the problem, like all this extra development that has been done. What was supposed to be water basin has now been filled up with big homes or neighborhoods, so the water didn't have any place to go. So that was one thing where we are perhaps as citizens not exercising all the restraints because we don't have the knowledge. And the second part is that we, even in many other sense, can do certain things to maybe create a public opinion, concerted public opinion, or what else can we do that can help the government and the decision makers? Or maybe you have a micro-funding green investment for this, where we can say, okay, I'm doing my part in investing in those schemes, which is going to solve the problem.
Right.
So is there anything where the citizens also have a direct role to play rather than just analyzing?
Yeah, look, this, so as a fourth generation Houstonian, and Texan, who lived outside of the state and the city for 25 years on the East Coast. So I get a chance, one, from the longevity of the roots of my family in, in Greater Houston and Texas, but also being an observer externally. Look, let's all be honest. Houston has had no zoning. Most communities that don't have any kind of zoning are free-wielding. They're wonderful economies, but when you have a series of persistent incidents, weather disasters, water and weather, it begins to show part of the weakness of not having the ability to more effectively design the infrastructure, whether it's residential or commercial, right? I think the reality is that that's no longer a question. That historically communities have grown themselves pretty significantly and invited in a lot of different levels of income and opportunity. But the flip side of it is when you have this much robust growth that's not designed to realize that at some point there is a chance that you're going to either not have enough water or have too much water. It causes a timeout. That's what's been underway. Frankly, it started before Harvey, bit by bit, but Harvey became what I refer to, even as a, maybe a former Republican or whatever I am these days, and a capitalist.
Sorry to interrupt you. My meeting time that was slated, it might just stop. And is it okay for you if I kind of call back, or if you have time? Otherwise, we can just maybe wrap up with this question. So sorry about that, but we can call back if you want.
Okay, so let me make it very, very quick. What can citizens do? One is stop expecting that insurance and reinsurance or somebody is going to bail you out from a poor decision. We do that all the time.
Right.
Okay. That's number one. Number two is that we can be a part of the community, the neighborhood, the community, and the larger redesign conversations that are underway about building in the right ways, building in the right locations, about how we use our infrastructure to channel these water sources and all, okay? This idea of quote unquote living with water, which the Europeans have really perfected. I think now citizens are really looking at how to adopt, but also they're saying to policymakers, we don't mind taxing ourselves for more bonds to build this infrastructure, all right? The $22 billion of infrastructure financing that's come about recently, okay? All right, they don't mind. What they want to know is that by taxing themselves, that this is going to actually make a difference, right? So this is not like we're just turning this over to our policymakers or our elected officials. citizens now have a responsibility to be a part of this redesign. Does that make sense?
Right, and that's exactly what I want to emphasize here, because you were so right when you said that the insurance, we depend on insurance to bail out. Not only that, then we almost remodel the house.
Right.
Let's change this, let's change this. Even where the water didn't reach, they completely remodeled their house, and they have a brand new house now.
Right.
With only maybe, nominal interest rates. That's incredibly lucrative, rather. So, and Grand Parkway, which was supposed to be, parkway on both sides of the road, is now just houses and neighborhoods and malls. So, yes, somewhere, the government is there for us, but at the same time, it shouldn't be on a repeated cycle where they just keep spending and we keep building and we keep.
So one of the things that we're looking at are new forms of public-private partnership. All right.
Yes.
In this case, the private sector, which is everything from some of the big real estate development, where you can actually utilize some of the under-leveraged, underutilized assets. And when we say that, that means, do we need all of these parking lots? Okay. Can we put something underneath these parking lots? Can we convert some of the size and scale of the detention retention ponds? How do we use the Katy Prairie in a way where it becomes not only a beautiful park and protected, but it becomes a part of our buffer, right? These kinds of public-private partnerships are going to be driven by citizens, investors, entrepreneurs, and innovators who say, we know the conditions that we already have because of our quote unquote lack of zoning. Now what we're trying to do is, within the spaces we've got, what can we actually do to amplify? And that is going to come from entrepreneurs, small businesses, citizens saying, we need to do this collectively, not you, government, or you, that's where I think, you're inspiring people to take action.
The we part, what you said, that we have to take action. So even in your website, Accelerator H2O, it says take action, but nothing is chunked up into what exactly can I do. So maybe that's one thing. And I was thinking, are you thinking of building underground tanks, which are like man-made aquifers? Under parking lots before they, just like in petrol, gas stations, they have something underneath.
Correct.
Here, can they have tanks?
Yep. So that's part of our role, is working with, and let's keep on using the case of Houston, and we know that there's other people who may see this from other parts of the country or the world, but let's just use this as an example. And that is, we have already put in place a demonstration hub with the City of Houston Public Works, City of Houston Water. But what's underway right now is a larger regional strategy to demonstrate technology like what you just said. And we've had people literally from around the world come forward and say, we can help fortify homes and protect them better from floods. We can create individual and neighborhood underground aquifers. Can I tell you, the ingenuity of the world, one of our taglines is unleashing innovation for 21st century water resiliency. And that's the reason why we're doing these inventathons with youth and students and with professionals, to basically say that there's the brilliance that sits in the citizens. If we can organize them and unleash them and find ways to demonstrate them that then can be scaled, can you imagine what that would do versus billions and billions of dollars of planning, and which is required and needed, but we could be jump-starting resilience now while the rest of that infrastructure is working its way through its process.
Right, more action than more words. So do you also think of an app that would tell us if I'm just wasting something that could mean a lot of water footprint? Are you all thinking of involving Bitcoin concept, like blue coins, where I can save, or not just household, but also maybe industrial, because industrial and agricultural, the consumption is the highest. So are you all also?
So that's a good point. And you're raising something I had a conversation about. I'm actually at an international conference of all places in Miami 2 weeks around smart water. And one of the discussions is that there are lots of apps now. I mean, this tool right here, I can tell you, I know there's an app that will tell me how much water I use day to day and where I'm wasting water. Okay. It can tell me where I'm losing water, right?
Which app is that?
Oh, I'm not joking. There are 20 plus apps.
Okay.
You know,
anyone can look up and find.
Right. No. But what I'm saying is, I think that one of the things that you may be able to help do in others is we need to find a place to aggregate the sources of this. Remember, one more time, drowning in data. Okay. We need to be able to say that these tools that are in my hand, that there's a lot of sources to do this. Okay.
Exactly.
And what can help me save money, mitigate my losses. But the other part to it is that there is enough, again, tools out there in the marketplace, all right, that I think what we realized in a conversation with a number of folks in Greater Houston is we need to kind of have a collaboratory platform, a platform where all of this data, all this information is organized in a way, again, that makes it useful, but also what are all the different tools that I, as a citizen, as a civic association, what's out there that I could use, okay? So I think you're spot on that it's not a lack of here's another, cute thing. It's not a lack of tools. It's that the tools are not in a box in a toolkit that makes it easy for me to go find it.
Exactly.
My wife tells me, go downstairs and get all of those hammers and drill, where's the battery? I mean, how come we're not organized, right? So I think that's a part of what you can do and with us and others is kind of create these toolkits where people know, man, I know where I can go to get this and I can use it this way.
And whether at all it exists, because now people might read this, or if I put a blog post out there, they'll say, oh, I didn't know that even exists. I love that. So thank you for whoever, does these things, and thank you for bringing it here for people to hear and maybe go look for them now. And I feel that innovation and proactive behavior both need to be in equal proportion for a solution to happen. And that's kind of our duty, at both ends, to see how we can bring them together for.
But let's define innovation as well, because sometimes the automatic definition of innovation is technology. It ain't even close to that. Innovation is a social enterprise, meaning, all right, again, using this, okay? Yeah, this is an innovation. It's a tool. The innovation is how I use it and how I make it productive, right? So if we look at innovation more as a social enterprise, and that includes practices, how we engage, how we make decisions, how we allocate our time and our money. Right?
Perfect. Yeah.
I mean, so that's the part where I want to make sure, and I think, your opening statement is, here's what we believe resilience is. That's how we're defining it. This is the reason why innovation is important, but innovation is not just technology. It is the social interaction. It's the people, it's the brain power. And I'm telling you, you don't have to be a PhD scientist to be an innovator. Okay, you don't have to have a lab coat to be an innovator. As a matter of fact, we saw in our first piloting of a youth and student water resiliency inventathon. Let me put it this way: when we had 13, 14, 15-year-old kids
Mm-hmm.
come up with the winning solution, which is an underwater drone to find out what's happening to the infrastructure that you wouldn't want to put a person in a, scuba gear and go down there. 13, 14, 15-year-olds. Okay. You can be an innovator. That's what we need to unleash.
Right. They are not conditioned to put limitations in their thoughts, so they can, engineers and just, there's no limit to find.
And we need to find a way to connect those innovators, wherever they are, to real world solutions and to the resources to help them move their ideas into their communities and into their markets. And that's, again, part of what we're trying to do in Houston. Now, I have to apologize. I'm sniffling. And the reason why I'm sniffling is an example of the water issue. Okay. So
good.
The mold count in the state of Texas is proportional to the amount of storm floods and rain that we've got. So
I was sniffling a little while ago, and I took pop a pill just to have this, interview going without.
I mean, you really want to get it down. You really want to get it down to the average person. I am telling you, too much rain and then a lot of drought dries. So all of us are suffering from. I think the only people making real money off of all of this weather-related stuff are the allergists.
So my job, from now on would be to be the connector to bring, what you all are doing, and you have it to the listeners, that it's not just a mutative technology or something new in the market that'll solve the problem, and I will be the happy consumer of it all. We all have a part to play in it. So you are doing the, fundraising and networking, and someone is sitting in lab coats and maybe working on solutions at the back end, and we as citizens, it's on us finally to see that it all works with the policies and their own day-to-day actions, where we can make it better for everyone.
We need more people such as you and others that I refer to as interpreters and communicators, right? And I try to do that sometimes successfully, probably most of the time not. But I think what we need are people who can listen to technical and interpret it for everyday use. And then we need persistent ways of communicating, right?
Right.
To basically say, yes, there is a solution, or here's how to connect, right? And I know a number of people that you and I have had a chance to hear from over the past 2 years, especially this younger generation loves communicating in lots of different social media platforms, but also engaging. And I just think that right now, it's not a failure to communicate. It's a failure to interpret the meaning.
Exactly.
And to drive it to, okay, now here's what you can do about it. Okay. Because a lot of people will sit there and go, this is too big. It is. It's very flood and water. It's very complex. We've made it. There's too many organizations that, have decision making, and all of a sudden you just get knotted up and you kind of go, no, I think we need ways for your listeners and readers and others to sense that there is a way to connect what I am sitting there thinking about to something that says I can do something about it, or I know who to talk with who is already doing something. And this is now citizen driven, citizen motivated, because government by themselves nor the private sector by themselves can solve this. We've got to have interpreters and communicators that are bringing these pieces together, whether it's for their own home, their community, their neighborhood, all the way up to even the places where they work, their employers.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Richard. I really appreciate your time and explaining it so well and bringing the key issues and what we need to do about that. And I hope that We will communicate more in future to see how we can bring this to the people who matter, who can apply.
I'm honored and thank you, because you're actually, I have 3 notes I need to write when we finish here, because you've inspired me to move forward on figuring out how we create a platform that makes sure that people can find all of these different tools that we talked about, what are out there. So
and I can definitely help you with that whenever you need it.
You're great. Well, thank you for your time, and
enjoy the weekend.
Look forward to continuing to be connected with you and your listeners.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Richard. All right, enjoy your weekend. Okay, bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this informative interview. If you want to watch more, please subscribe below, and I would love to know your thoughts and questions too. So don't forget to comment below, and we'll get back to you soon. Till then, be well and be green. Bye-bye.